The next speaker is one that you most likely know about him. He just broke 500,000 subscribers on YouTube. He's great. He does the best owning libs videos I've ever seen. Hunter Avallone.
How's everyone doing tonight? Thank you guys, it's seriously a pleasure to be here today. You know, it's not hard to see that the left wants to control you. Control leads to power, and that is what the left truly wants. Just look at how liberals reacted when they lost potential power during the 2016 election. They threw tantrums. They smashed windows. They screamed helplessly at the sky. They provided safe spaces. They pretended to behead Donald Trump. And they even went as far as to curse us all with that stampede of unshowered feminists, also known as the Women's March. Liberals were absolutely furious and heartbroken. And you know, I'll be honest, I don't think I've seen this many Democrats act out and get violent since we took away their slaves. Almost every liberal agenda, every liberal talking point can be traced back to the core goal, and even the core outcomes at times, to control. The left wants control. More specifically, they want to control you. First things first, the left wants to control the youth. We have a lot of conservative high schoolers here tonight, right? Yeah, that must really suck. I mean, I was lucky enough to be homeschooled, but you guys got it really rough. I mean, you walk into school and you're surrounded by people, you don't know if they identify as a boy, a girl, or a toucan. I mean, you got an A+ on your test? Why don't you just shut up about it, you privileged little bigot? Stephanie over here just came out as a genderqueer, non-binary, brave little toaster. And I get it, you know, you're a little scared to talk to Z, because if you mess up their pronouns, well, you're getting expelled. But you're also not talking to them, which probably means you're transphobic, and now you're getting expelled. But the left wants to control the youth. They want to control you guys because if the left controls the youth, the left controls the future. The leftist agenda is already being fed to children. Children as young as 3 years old are being taught about being non-binary. Kids in high school are being encouraged to be anti-Trump. And the left glorifies youth, pushing the leftist agenda, and they ignore the youth who push against it. Once you get to college, you've already had the liberal agenda heavily pushed on you, but now it gets even worse. According to the Washington Times, liberal professors outnumber conservative professors nearly 12-1. The left starts indoctrinating people at a very young age. As I mentioned before, kids as young as 3 years old are being taught about non-binary, privilege, coming out, being LGBT, and yes, even feminism. An example of this is a YouTube channel known as Queer Kids Stuff. Now, if the name alone doesn't give you herpes, it creates extremely liberal videos for children as young as 3 years old. Although it only has 11,000 subscribers, it is endorsed by the Huffington Post and recently raised over $20,000 to continue the production of the horrible show. The left knows if they can indoctrinate impressionable children, they have a higher chance of future control. According to Association for Psychological Science, a 2010 study found that 3-year-olds, specifically, are generally trusting of what people say to them. They're learning how to talk, but lack judgment and logic skills. When a 3-year-old sits down and is fed anti-science BS that there's more than 2 genders, they're more likely to believe it. It's amazing how desperate the left can be. You know, if you can only further your agenda by trying to brainwash naive children, your agenda might be stupid. But this is just one of the many ways the left tries to indoctrinate young children and eventually gain control. If they miss you when you're an impressionable child, they will try again when you're older. When the tragic shooting took place in Parkland earlier this year, there was a clear bias in the amount of media coverage that the anti-Second Amendment puppets, David Snot-Nosed Hogg and Emma Gone Crazy, received over the pro-Second Amendment Kyle Kashav. It may be at a more subconscious level, but do you really think that other young people aren't taking note of the amount of attention, rewards, and praise these teens received for upholding and pushing the liberal side? The left knew what they were doing. They made David Hogg famous. David Hogg is an idiot who adamantly detests conservatives. David Hogg is now influencing young minds everywhere. And the left is winning over more and more youth, solidifying future control and power. Finally, the left has clearly infiltrated our college campuses, giving them yet another chance to gain control of our youth. I mean, have you seen what college does to people nowadays? It's like, you know a nice girl? She's heading off to college, so you want to be polite, so you go ahead and let her know, hey, good luck, you got a bright future ahead of you. Yeah, 2 years later, she accuses you of sexual harassment for speaking to her without her consent. According to the Higher Education Research Institute, a study conducted with over 140,000 first-year students attending 200 different public and private institutions, 71% believe they should ban racist and sexist speech on campus, and 43% believe they can ban extreme speakers from their campus. After the election, campuses everywhere supported anti-Trump hysteria, further validating the liberal agenda, the enticement of our youth to further gain control. When the left validates the hurt feelings of offended students, they are validating what the students believe to be true. It doesn't matter if it is or not, but the left tells these students that they are right in what they feel and believe, leading to the creation of a liberal. If someone is on the fence with politics and they see the campus supporting the notion that Trump is the enemy, the world is coming to an end, and they see conservatives being ignored or even harassed, it's easy to believe that you are on the right side of history to call yourself a liberal and be against Donald Trump. I think this college crisis reveals another powerful way the left gains control as well, and that is by creating victims, which leads me to my next point. The left needs victims. The left loves a good victim, and they create and use victims in many different ways. One of the crafty ways they create victims is to first create the problem, create the oppression, and then they offer themselves as the cure. We have liberal-supported social movements like feminism, which no longer focuses on giving women equal rights. It's about who's more oppressed. The left lies to feminists. They make up BS about a gender wage gap. They tell us about a BS rape culture, and they blame sexism for everything. They convince these women that they are oppressed. They are a victim. The left then offers itself as the safe space from this so-called oppression. They offer a liberal candidate who promises to fix these oppressions. Feminists are convinced their rights are under attack, so when liberal media tells them Trump is going to take away their rights, feminists act accordingly. Other social movements like Black Lives Matter have a similar structure. Through the creation of oppression, the leftist agenda is being furthered. It doesn't help that movements like feminism and Black Lives Matter are supported and promoted by virtually every mainstream liberal media outlet as well. I believe that college campuses also play a huge part in encouraging the growth of a victim mentality. As I touched on previously, after the election, campuses magically seem to turn into a daycare center. Universities offered support to students after Trump won the election. Some elite campuses even offered coloring books and puppies to help students cope. I wonder how many liberals saw this and thought to themselves, wow, validation, coddling, gifts, are my parents getting divorced again? This behavior trains students to believe they're the victim, they're in trouble, woe is me, and what I feel is correct and not to be challenged. The left convinces people that they're victims by using identity politics. To believe yourself a victim is to be lazy. Yet the left offers these select victims freedom from responsibility. They give them an enemy to blame, whether it be white men or the patriarchy or institutional racism, and lies posing as justification for having a victim mindset. This is essentially leftist grooming with the intent of making you reliant on leftist policies and ideals. This, of course, leads to more push for progressivism and more liberal candidates being elected. Another way the left uses victims is to shut down any form of debate. When these self-entitled victims have their ideas challenged, they are offended. To challenge a leftist idea, you are now an evil, bigoted oppressor, challenging not an idea, but someone's oppression. The left uses victims to shut down debate and conversation, so that ultimately, only the liberal viewpoint will be heard or tolerated. This gives them more control over what speech is allowed and what speech is hate speech. Leftism relies on faux victims and the delusion of oppression. Have you ever noticed the left always encourages society to change for the sake of someone's feelings, but they never encourage the individual to change for the sake of society? The liberal agenda needs oppression to thrive. Have you ever told anyone the wage gap is a myth? Why would feminists and members on the left take offense to this? Wouldn't the possibility that they aren't oppressed be exciting? If you give up leftism, you can no longer blame your issues on society, and you are forced to take responsibility. Without oppression, the leftist agenda will crumble, so they will do everything they can to keep you as a weak victim. By allowing yourself to become a victim, you become reliant on the left to uphold your victim narrative and to exempt you from responsibility. One of the many ways they do this is by blaming society or members of society for your difficulties. Specifically, they blame white people and men, which brings me to my final point. The left controls white people and men with guilt. Have you ever met anyone with white guilt? Anyone here ever met anyone with white guilt? What's the deal with those guys? I mean, they walk around hanging their head, sipping their soy, and just praying. And they just pray for the day that they can just go reverse Michael Jackson and get rid of their evil white male privilege. It's easy to fall into this trap. The left is constantly shaming white people and men and pushing them towards submission through guilt. This guilt campaign is running rampant. White people are labeled as privileged, men are accused of upholding the patriarchy and having toxic masculinity. The New York Times has published articles titled, "Can My Kids Be Friends with White People?" and another supporting the idea that if you let boys be boys, they will murder their fathers and sleep with their mothers. New York Times, ladies and gentlemen. So who here is sort of BuzzFeed? Does anyone like BuzzFeed here? In 2016, they released a video titled "Questions Women Have for Men." One of the questions being, why is it your first instinct to doubt women who've been violated? Earlier this year, they released an article titled 37 Things White People Need to Stop Ruining in 2018, featuring some stuff white people allegedly ruined in 2017 and should just stop ruining in 2018. And you know, I'll be honest, I kind of think we need another article. Maybe, I don't know, things liberals ruined in 2017. Their chances of a future election win. The liberal opinion of white people and men is extremely low, and the left isn't trying to hide that. The left creates imaginary victims, and the left creates imaginary perpetrators. Men are shamed for acting masculine and pushed towards being ashamed of existing, and white people are shamed for the actions of white people hundreds of years ago and told they're evil and privileged. Isn't it funny that liberals claim it's racist to treat a black person as the spokesperson for their race, yet they have no issue treating white people as the spokesperson for members of their race from hundreds of years ago? White people are shamed, treated as perpetrators or upholders of an oppressive system, and called privileged. And I'll be honest, it's really nice being privileged. I'm so privileged, I'm not even allowed to speak about certain things because I'm privileged. The left pushes the false myth of white privilege. This makes white people feel guilty, and they are more likely to follow what the liberal agenda tells them in an attempt to rid themselves of this guilt founded on nothing. Similarly, when it comes to men, the left tells them they are oppressors, harassers, and abusers, leading to a generation of cucked, guilt-ridden men. I mean, have you seen some of these guys? They walk around in a fantasy just believing lie after lie. Lies like, women are oppressed, or I need to be a feminist to be for equality, or I shouldn't be allowed to speak, and my father will be back home soon. It's ridiculous. The left backs men into a corner. They claim that men are the problem, and if you deny it, they claim that proves their point. This fills men with guilt, which pushes them to vote for a more liberal candidate who claims to solve these terrible oppressions women are facing due to men. They support movements like feminism, which is filled with misandry, in hopes of getting rid of their guilt. The left now has emotional control over a select amount of white people and men, the privileged groups, recognizing their privilege as they're supposed to, furthering the leftist agenda. The left feeds on the weak, impressionable, and the easily influenced. They indoctrinate the youth, they create victims, and they fill a select few with guilt, all with the core goal being control. So to the high schoolers currently dealing with a liberal agenda at your school, my advice would be, don't shut up. The left doesn't care about being right. They care about getting you to be quiet. So be logical, be tactful, and never shut up. Don't let the left control you. If anyone here feels like a victim, it may be time to ask yourself, am I really a victim, or am I just being used as a pawn? Don't let the left use you. And if anyone here feels guilty about being a man or being white, stop. You are not responsible for the past actions of white people, and anyone claiming you are is a thin-skinned racist. Men, use your masculinity to protect and defend, but don't feel guilty for being a man. Don't go along with leftist ideals to try and make a non-existent wrong right. Ladies and gentlemen, don't let the left control you. Thank you.
Jumped in the cab, here